Loot box are gonna die.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen?
Hey, we're back.
We are back today, and it's a damn fine day to be back because it looks like we're finally making some progress in this bullshit war.
Only a week ago, we were like, look, this shit's going down, but it's not really gonna go down. We didn't think that the loot box was actually at risk
It was
of
almost
being
like
taken away.
It was almost like it was too powerful.
Yes.
You know?
You have no power here.
It's like you can't stop Wall Street, man. You
Yeah.
just can't fight the man.
Yeah,
It's like,
100%.
there's no point, you know?
It's the only thing that could take down loot boxes, isn't it? Star Wars.
That's right.
You know, huge game like this that gets the attention of everybody. For them to start, for governments to start looking at it and going, hang on a second, this is actually
weird.
shit for people.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
So if you're wondering what the latest developments are, there's 3 big news items that happened in the last 24 hours. It's almost difficult to believe that they all happened on the
Yes.
same day, actually. Because for months now, years now, people have been talking about the predatory practice of loot boxes, and all in one day, all of this went down. So
Yeah.
the first thing that happened was that the Belgium gambling authorities, regulator basically, came out and said that they feel as though that loot boxes are in fact a form of gambling. Now, this doesn't mean that they've banned it. It doesn't mean that there's any legislation. It doesn't mean anything changes.
Yeah.
It just means that they've looked at it and they said, yep, we're pretty sure this is gambling.
Yeah.
And they said that they plan to ban it across all of Europe.
You have a gambling problem.
Europeans very much like to work within the European Union construct, right? So they're not going to just try and ban it in Belgium. They're going to try and get it banned across all of Europe. That
And
was
yes-
what they said.
And yesterday or like, it was only the span of 10 hours,
Yeah.
people thought, oh my god, no, loot boxes are done, it's definitely gambling. Well, no, since then, people have come out and said, actually, not yet, but it's on the way.
Correct. So it's a really great step though, because it means that a nation is like, you know what, this is fucked. And it's not just one nation, by the way. It is, but they're trying to connect to all of Europe and highlight the issue across all of Europe about why this is such a problem and why this is such a predatory practice. So that was a huge deal, okay? But that does not compare to old mate Chris Lee
Yes.
from Hawaii. Fucking my new favorite man. He's a member of the state legislature there. He's like this dude in a suit. He's like, time for me to lay some fucking smack down, okay? So what he said was, he basically got up and said that loot boxes are predatory. And he actually titled the YouTube video that he uploaded to this press conference like a response to the predatory actions of
Yes.
EA. There was like, it's predatory actions of EA. And like the press conference was just a sight to behold. You have to hear some of these quotes.
And there's 2 things you can tell by Chris. Number 1, he's definitely a gamer. There's
Hell
no
yeah,
way
man.
he is not a gamer. And number
sure.
2, he loves his Star Wars. He loves his Star Wars big time.
We're here today to ensure future protections for kids, youth, and everyone when it comes to the spread of predatory practices in online gaming.
It's a trap.
And the significant financial consequences that it can have on families
It's a trap.
and has been having on families around this nation. This game is
Say the line.
a Star Wars themed online casino designed to lure kids into spending money.
Just do the line.
It's a trap.
But the actual best footage, the best line of the entire press conference came from this guy.
Some of you folks who are a little older may remember a character by the name of Joe Camel. He's not around anymore, and we didn't allow Joe Camel to encourage your kids to smoke cigarettes, and we shouldn't allow Star Wars to encourage your kids to gamble.
Basically, if anyone doesn't understand the background to this, cigarette companies used to have this, or one of the cigarette companies used to have this mascot, like Joe Camel, or Camel Joe, one of the two anyway. But he was like this really cute, lovable camel guy that smoked, and was trying to encourage kids to, you know, to smoke ultimately. And obviously the cigarette companies didn't admit that, but that was clearly the intent.
How mild, how mild, how mild can a cigarette be?
and that was eventually outlawed because they're like, no, you can't do that.
It's the
shit.
same with McDonald's and Ronald McDonald trying to get kids to eat crappy food. It's the same
exactly
thing.
the same thing, right? And that's one of the reasons why you don't see Ronald McDonald around as much, because McDonald's don't want the stink of people being able to say you're trying to trick children into this stuff. Now, they still find other ways around it, but Ronald is not so front and center these days, specifically for that reason. Now here, these Hawaii legislature people are basically like, we cannot let Star Wars encourage our kids to gamble. And at that point, the Disney executives would be like,
Long live EA.
Can you imagine what they're thinking right now? They're like, holy shit, EA is like the worst person we could have picked for this shit.
so good. Like, it's just such a beautiful one-liner as well. Like, it's so made for television that you would have this comparison to cigarette company mascots when you talk about this issue. Like, it was just such a perfectly scripted press conference. I reckon the "it's a trap" thing they put in there as a little like,
I reckon, yeah.
have this one, gents.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We'll
Have
give you
this for the memes,
That's
guys.
right, have this for the memes. And then the Joe Camel thing was like, so that like BBC and CNN would pick
Yes.
it up. And then finally, so all of a sudden, out of the blue, the very last bit that we heard was around from actually Australia,
Our hometown.
the land down under, mate. That's how they talk here, right, mate? So what happened is that in Australia there are different states. One of the states is called Victoria. The Victorian gambling regulator has a guy, I forget his name, but whatever. He basically responded to an inquiry from someone saying, you know, are loot boxes gambling? And this guy said, well, I've looked at it. They look like gambling to me.
EA.
There's no legislation around it yet, right? We can't stop anything. There's nothing to do here, but it's definitely a conversation that we need to take forward because looking at this is a form of gambling. So, in one day, 3 countries around the world declared this gambling, and Hawaii just laid the full smackdown, being like, nah, man, this is the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
It's a Star Wars themed casino. Okay, so all this is really great news. It's really encouraging. Governments are starting to move against loot boxes, but nothing's happened yet. My question is, what do you actually think will happen now? What is going to take place in the next year with regards to loot box?
It's gonna be different, that's for sure. I don't think it's gonna be the same. Different. Insightful. It's gonna be different. I think now that all these AAA titles and big publishers, it has to fundamentally change because they know now it's bad business. They know it's bad business. When you're dealing with gambling and any AAA title that will include children, it's just, it's dangerous waters. And I think
Very.
this situation, there's 2 outcomes. The dust settles and not much really happens, right? Which I hope that doesn't happen. But going forward, the loot box will always be different now in terms of how they bring it out to the public.
I just think it's got so much stink on it now.
I agree.
It's like
I agree.
so
But
much
what I'm
stink
saying
on
is,
it.
if all the governments come out and they don't really put in place what they should, and they're still able to implement loot boxes, I still think that they will try and do some things, but it'll never be as terrible as what EA has done with these loot boxes in Battlefront 2. They would have learnt their lesson, and they would have said, okay, loot boxes suck, we know it, but we want to keep putting it in our games, but they can never be as bad as that again.
Yeah, I think
that's
so.
what's like. But the second thing that I think will happen is the force will be too strong from the public.
The Force.
And they'll just have to take them out entirely and rework the idea of how to continue to monetize a game. And that way will be skins or characters, you know, $1.99 or $2.99 for those characters, and you know up front what you're paying for. It won't be a loot box situation ever again.
I agree. I just think that, in terms of legislation, I think legislation will definitely come through that will mean that it will be harder for publishers just to make so much money off loot boxes. I reckon you'll absolutely see it regulated as a form of gambling in some countries, and that means straight away that publishers have to respond, because you can't release a kids game and also have like gambling on the box. There's just no way that would fly. So that whole model needs to change.
At the moment, Chris Lee's holding the golden gun. He's talking about kids and gambling. It's like,
True. He's like,
there
he's a
is
smart
no
man.
argument against that. EA or any company cannot come out and go, well, we defend what we do because it makes us money.
And imagine if
Can't
some
do that.
politician got up and said, I stand today in support of Electronic Arts, and it's right to get kids gambling.
And then EA
No politician would ever fucking say that, man. None.
Yeah, and then EA comes and goes, here's your bag of money. He's
Right,
like,
just
did
drop it
you
on
have
the
to do
desk.
it right now? Far out. So that's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, but so legislative change, but also just the stink associated with them. I just think it's such a game changer,
Yes.
right? At the end of the day, there's so much negativity about this now. There's so much awareness of what this is that who the fuck? If you're a publisher, why would you do this now? Why would you bring this to your game? Why would you bring that stink to your game?
Yeah.
Like, you just wouldn't do it.
It's fundamentally different to the outrage of Oblivion with the horse armor, because that was kind of contained in the gaming community. That outrage.
It was very much contained.
It was contained. It's
True.
different.
It's
With
true.
this, it's outside now. It's on CNN, you know, it's going to be on
True.
the Wall Street Journal, it's going to be everywhere. Disney has to get involved. There's going to be all sorts of headlines, juicy headlines.
Very juicy.
It's going to be different now because it can't just be contained within the gaming industry.
So EA, you fucked up so
big
royally.
time.
So
and
good.
we are so happy.
We are so happy about this.